The smell of charcoal and barbecue sauce hung heavy in the afternoon air as I pulled into my parents' driveway, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The annual Henderson family reunion was in full swing. I could hear the laughter and chatter spilling from the backyard, punctuated by the occasional sizzle from the grill. I sat in my car for a moment longer, steeling myself for what I knew would be another performance of the Happy Family charade. 3 months. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. It had been 3 months since I'd discovered the truth, and I still felt the bitter taste of betrayal coating my tongue like ash. 3 months since I'd learned that my adoption at age 5 hadn't been the loving rescue story I'd been told my entire life. 3 months since I'd found the letters. My name is Sarah, and I thought I knew who I was. I thought I was the grateful daughter who'd been saved from a tragic situation, brought into a loving family who chose me. I thought my cousin Emma was my closest friend, practically my sister, the biological daughter who had welcomed me with open arms 23 years ago. I thought my parents, David and Margaret Henderson, were saints who had opened their hearts and home to a broken little girl. I was wrong about everything. As I walked through the side gate into the backyard, the familiar scene unfolded before me. Uncle Jim was manning the grill with his usual theatrical flair, spatula in one hand, beer in the other. Aunt Carol was arranging potato salad on the picnic table with military precision. Children ran between the adults' legs, their shrieks of delight mixing with the classic rock pumping from someone's Bluetooth speaker. And there, holding court near the pool, was Emma. Golden-haired, blue-eyed Emma, regaling a group of relatives with some animated story that had them all laughing. She looked exactly the same as she always had. Perfect. While I'd always been the dark-haired, olive-skinned outsider in this family of Nordic features, Emma had been the golden child in every sense. Homecoming queen, valedictorian, married to her college sweetheart, mother of 2 beautiful children, successful marketing executive. Everything came easily to her, while I'd spent my life working twice as hard to prove I belonged. Sarah, my mother's voice cut through my dark thoughts. Margaret Henderson approached with her arms outstretched, her smile a little too bright, a little too forced. Sweetheart, you're late. We were worried you weren't coming. I accepted her hug, breathing in her familiar perfume, the same Chanel number, 5 she'd worn for as long as I could remember. For a moment, muscle memory kicked in, and I almost forgot why I was here. Almost forgot what I'd learned. Almost forgot the carefully planned revenge that had consumed my thoughts for 3 months. Sorry, Mom. Traffic was terrible. I lied smoothly, returning her smile with one of my own. I'd had plenty of practice pretending everything was fine. Well, you're here now. That's what matters. Emma's been asking about you all day. She has some exciting news to share. Margaret's eyes sparkled with the kind of pride I'd seen directed at Emma countless times throughout our lives, but never quite at me. My stomach clenched. More good news for perfect Emma. Of course, I made my way through the crowd, accepting hugs and kisses from aunts and uncles, answering the same questions about my job at the nonprofit, my dating life, non-existent, my plans for the future, uncertain. All the while, I kept one eye on Emma, watching her laugh and gesture, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. Sarah! Emma's voice rang out as she spotted me. She broke away from her audience and practically bounded over, her sundress fluttering around her knees, her perfect smile stretching across her face. Oh my God, I've been dying to tell you my news. She threw her arms around me in one of her trademark enthusiastic hugs, and for a split second, I was transported back to childhood, to sleepovers and shared secrets, to the time she'd defended me against bullies at school, to all the moments when I'd believed we were truly sisters. The betrayal cut deeper because of how much I'd loved her. "What's the news?" I asked, though part of me already knew. I'd done my research thoroughly. "I got the promotion!" she squealed, bouncing slightly on her toes. "Senior Vice President of Marketing. Can you believe it? The youngest person in the company's history to reach that level. They're giving me the Peterson account. You know, the multi-million-dollar campaign I've been dreaming about." The Peterson account. The one I'd helped her prepare for, staying up all night 3 months ago to help her put together the presentation. The one she'd gotten because of information I'd unknowingly provided. Information about the client's preferences that I'd overheard at a work function and mentioned in passing. "Congratulations," I managed, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "You must be so proud." "I am. And you know what the best part is? I can finally afford to help Mom and Dad with their retirement. They've done so much for both of us, especially taking you in when you had nowhere else to go. I want to make sure they're taken care of." There it was, the casual reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. The grateful adoptee who should always remember that she was here by grace, not by right. Emma delivered it with such innocent charm that anyone listening would think she was just being sweet. But I knew better now. I'd learned to read between the lines. "That's wonderful of you," I said, matching her tone perfectly. "They're lucky to have such a thoughtful daughter." The word daughter hung in the air between us, and for just a moment I thought I saw something flicker in Emma's eyes. But then Uncle Jim was calling everyone to attention, his booming voice carrying across the yard. "All right, everyone, time for the blessing and the toast before we dig into this magnificent feast." The family gathered in a loose circle around the picnic tables laden with food. This was tradition. Uncle Jim would say a blessing, Dad would make a toast about family, and then we'd all attack the buffet like loquans. I found myself standing between my parents, Emma directly across from me, her husband Mark at her side, with their 2 children clinging to his legs. "Lord, we thank you for bringing us all together again," Uncle Jim began, his voice taking on the solemn tone he reserved for these moments. "For family, for food, for the blessing of another year together." I let his words wash over me, my mind drifting to the manila envelope hidden in my purse. 3 months ago, I'd been helping my parents clean out their basement when I'd found a box of old papers tucked behind some Christmas decorations. Most of it was meaningless. Old tax documents, expired warranties, random letters. But at the bottom, wrapped in a rubber band, were letters addressed to my parents in handwriting I didn't recognize. The first letter was dated 6 months before my adoption. A social worker was writing to inform them that my biological parents had died in a car accident, leaving me orphaned. Standard stuff, until I got to the second letter, dated 2 months later. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, thank you for your continued interest in little Sarah. However, I must inform you that her biological grandmother has come forward and is willing to take custody. Mrs. Eleanor Walsh is financially stable and eager to raise her granddaughter. While I understand this may be disappointing, the family has legal precedents in adoption cases." The letter went on to explain that my grandmother, a woman I'd never known existed, had been fighting for custody of me. There were more letters, documenting a legal battle that lasted months. Letters from lawyers, social workers, court officials. And then, finally, a letter that made my blood run cold. It was from my father to the social worker, dated just a week before my adoption was finalized. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez, I want to thank you for your discretion in this matter. As discussed, Emma has been having such a difficult time adjusting to the idea of sharing our attention with another child. Dr. Patterson feels that having Sarah join our family would be therapeutic for Emma. She would have someone to care for and protect, which would help her process her own feelings of insecurity. Please ensure that Mrs. Walsh understands that this arrangement is in Sarah's best interest. A child needs a stable family unit, and while I'm sure Mrs. Walsh means well, Emma needs this more. The therapeutic benefits for our biological daughter must take precedence. As discussed, the additional contribution to the agency's building fund has been arranged. Sincerely, David Henderson. The rest of the letters documented how my father had essentially bought my adoption, using his connections and Emma's supposed psychological needs to override my grandmother's legal claim. My grandmother, who had fought for me, who had wanted me, who had been denied her own granddaughter so that Emma could have a living doll to help with her adjustment issues. I'd spent hours researching after that, tracking down records, making phone calls. Eleanor Walsh had died 7 years ago, taking with her any chance of knowing my real family history. But I'd learned enough. I'd learned that Emma's adjustment issues had been nothing more than typical childhood jealousy, blown out of proportion by parents who couldn't bear to see their precious daughter unhappy. I'd learned that I'd been stolen from the only blood family I'd had left. And now Dad would like to say a few words. Uncle Jim was finishing up. My father stepped forward, his salt and pepper hair catching the late afternoon sunlight. David Henderson was a distinguished man, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of presence that commanded respect in any room. He'd built a successful law practice from nothing, worked his way up from a poor kid in the suburbs to a pillar of the community. I'd always admired him, always wanted to make him proud. Now I wondered how many other families he'd destroyed with his money and connections. Family, he began, his voice warm and rich, is not just about blood. It's about the bonds we choose to forge, the love we choose to share, the commitment we make to stand by each other through thick and thin. Several people nodded approvingly. I saw Aunt Carol wipe away a tear. 23 years ago, Margaret and I made a choice that changed our lives forever. We opened our home and our hearts to a little girl who needed us, and in return, she blessed our family immeasurably. Sarah, sweetheart. He turned to me, his eyes soft with what looked like genuine affection. You've been the daughter we always hoped for. Kind, intelligent, hardworking. You've made us prouder than you could ever know. The irony was suffocating. He spoke of choice, of blessing, while I stood there knowing the truth, that I'd been a therapeutic tool for Emma, a living teddy bear to soothe her childhood anxieties, that my real family had been pushed aside like an inconvenience. And Emma, he continued, turning to his biological daughter, you've shown us what it means to have a generous heart. From the day Sarah joined our family, you welcomed her as a true sister. You've embodied the best of what family means. Emma beamed, unconsciously straightening her shoulders. Even now, at 28 years old, she still preened under her father's praise like a child. So let's raise our glasses, Dad continued, lifting his beer, to family, chosen and biological, to love that transcends blood, and to the bonds that hold us together no matter what life throws our way. To family, the crowd chorused, glasses and bottles and juice boxes lifting into the air. But Emma wasn't done. She stepped forward, her own glass held high, her cheeks flushed with excitement and alcohol. Wait! I want to add something. The family turned to her expectantly. Emma had always been dramatic, always needed to be the center of attention. Some things never changed. I know Dad just made a beautiful toast, but I want to add my own. She began, her voice carrying across the yard. Today isn't just about celebrating family, it's about celebrating truth. Celebrating the people who truly belong, who truly commit, who truly understand what family means. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. There was an edge there, a sharpness that didn't match her bright smile. So I want to make a special toast, Emma continued, her eyes finding mine across the circle. To the real daughter, The one who stayed and supported this family through everything. The one who never questioned her place, never doubted her belonging, never went digging through old papers looking for secrets that should stay buried. The world stopped. The background noise of children playing, music pumping, neighbors calling over fences. All of it faded to nothing as Emma's words hit me like a physical blow. She knew. Somehow, she knew what I'd discovered. The one who understands that family is about loyalty, not legal documents. Emma pressed on, her smile never wavering even as her words turned to poison. The one who knows that some truths are better left alone, because the family we choose is always more important than the family we're born into. I felt my parents' eyes on me, saw the confusion on Uncle Jim's face, noticed how several relatives were looking back and forth between Emma and me, like they were watching a tennis match. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stare at Emma as she delivered her devastating blow with the sweet smile of an angel. To the daughter who truly belongs here, she finished, raising her glass higher. To me. The silence that followed was deafening. A few people raised their glasses uncertainly, not quite understanding what had just happened, but sensing the undercurrent of tension. Others lowered their drinks, suddenly uncomfortable. "Emma," my mother said carefully, "what are you—" "Oh, I think Sarah knows exactly what I'm talking about," Emma interrupted, her eyes still locked on mine. "Don't you, Sarah? You've been so quiet lately. So distant. Ever since your little archaeological expedition in the basement 3 months ago?" The pieces fell into place. The way my parents had been watching me carefully at family gatherings. The way Emma's comments about my place in the family had become more frequent, more pointed. The way certain conversations stopped when I entered a room. They all knew. They'd known that I knew, and they'd been waiting to see what I would do about it. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice sounding strange and far away even to my own ears. Emma laughed, a tinkling sound that had once been music to my ears and now sounded like breaking glass. "Come on, Sarah. We're family. We don't lie to each other." "Well," she paused dramatically, "most of us don't." "Emma, that's enough." My father's voice carried a warning, but it was too late. The dam had burst. "Is it enough, Dad?" Emma turned to him, her voice rising. "Because I don't think it is. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what family really means, about loyalty, about gratitude, about not biting the hand that feeds you." "What the hell is going on?" Uncle Jim demanded, looking around the circle like he'd missed some crucial piece of information. "Sarah found some old letters," Emma explained, her voice bright and conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. "Letters about her adoption. Letters that told a story she didn't like very much. And instead of coming to talk to her family about it, instead of trusting that we always have her best interests at heart, she's been sulking and plotting and probably planning some dramatic confrontation." All eyes turned to me. I could feel the weight of their stares, the judgment, the curiosity. Some looked sympathetic, others confused. A few, like Emma's husband Mark, looked distinctly uncomfortable. "Is that true, sweetheart?" my mother asked softly. "Did you find something that upset you?" The concern in her voice was genuine, I could tell. But it was the concern of someone who'd been caught in a lie, not the concern of someone who'd genuinely done nothing wrong. She knew exactly what I'd found. "I found letters about my grandmother," I said quietly, my voice barely carrying across the circle. "Eleanor Walsh, the grandmother who wanted to raise me, the grandmother you paid to have denied custody so Emma could have a therapeutic pet." The reaction was immediate. Several relatives gasped. Uncle Jim dropped his spatula. Aunt Carol's hand flew to her mouth. But my parents and Emma, they just looked tired, like they'd been waiting for this shoe to drop for months. Sarah, my father began, his lawyer voice kicking in, you don't understand the whole situation. Don't I? The anger I'd been suppressing for 3 months finally broke free, pouring out of me like lava. I understand that a 5-year-old girl lost her parents in a car crash. I understand that her grandmother fought to take her in, to keep her with family. I understand that you used your money and connections to override her legal claim because your precious daughter needed a living doll to help her feel better about herself. It wasn't like that, Emma said, but for the first time her voice lacked its usual confidence. Wasn't it? I turned to her, all pretense of civility gone. What was it like, Emma? Please, enlighten me. Tell me how stealing a child from her only living relative was actually a kindness. Tell me how lying to that child for 23 years was protecting her. Tell me how using that child as your personal therapy, animal, was love? You weren't stolen. Emma's mask finally slipped, revealing the ugly truth underneath. You were rescued. Do you have any idea what your life would have been like with that old woman? She lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. She worked as a seamstress. She could barely afford to feed herself, let alone raise a child. That was my choice to make, I screamed, years of suppressed rage finally finding its voice. She was my family, my blood. You had no right to take that from me. We gave you everything, Emma screamed back. We gave you a beautiful home, the best schools, family vacations, college tuition, everything. And this is how you repay us? By acting like we kidnapped you? You did kidnap me. Legally maybe, but you stole me from the only family I had left. That woman wasn't your family. Emma's face was red now, her carefully constructed composure completely shattered. We're your family. We chose you. We wanted you. We love you. You used me. The words tore from my throat like broken glass. I wasn't your daughter. I was your emotional support animal. You took me from my grandmother so you could play house, so you could feel better about yourself, so you could be the generous big sister who saved the poor orphan. That's not true, Emma stammered, but I could see the truth in her eyes. Isn't it? Then why the toast, Emma? Why the public humiliation? Why make it clear to everyone here that I don't really belong, that I'm here by sufferance, that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of affection you throw my way? The family watched our confrontation like spectators at a car accident, horrified but unable to look away. I could see shock on some faces, understanding on others, and, on a few, something that might have been guilt. Because you're acting like we owe you something, Emma exploded. Like we haven't given you everything good in your life, like you weren't nobody before we saved you. I wasn't nobody, I said quietly, my voice deadly calm now. I was Eleanor Walsh's granddaughter. I was someone. And you made me into nobody. You made me into your grateful little adoptee who should never ask questions, never demand answers, never expect to be treated as an equal. We always treated you as an equal, my mother said, tears streaming down her cheeks. No, I said, turning to her. You treated me as a guest, a permanent guest who should always mind her manners, always be grateful, always remember that she could be asked to leave if she caused too much trouble. Sarah, please, my father said, let us explain. Explain what? How you bribed social workers? How you used your law firm's connections to override a grandmother's custody claim? How you decided that your daughter's psychological comfort was more important than keeping a family together. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone, he said weakly. You thought you were doing what was best for Emma, I corrected. I was collateral damage. My grandmother was collateral damage. The social worker who tried to do the right thing was collateral damage. We were all acceptable losses in the quest to make sure Emma got exactly what she wanted. I looked around the circle at my family, the people I'd loved, trusted, tried so hard to please for 23 years. Some looked ashamed, others looked angry. A few looked like they wished they were anywhere else. But Emma looked like she was gearing up for another attack. "Fine," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, Mom and Dad fought to adopt you. Yes, they wanted me to have a sister. And yes, it was therapeutic for me. But you know what else is true? I loved you from the first day you walked into our house. I shared my room with you, my toys, my parents, my entire life. I defended you at school, helped you with homework, celebrated your victories, and comforted you when you cried. I was your sister in every way that mattered." Her voice broke slightly, and for a moment I saw the little girl who had welcomed me all those years ago. "But apparently, none of that matters," she continued, "because it wasn't perfect. Because our parents made decisions you don't like. Because you found out that your adoption wasn't the fairy tale you thought it was. Well, guess what, Sarah? None of our lives are fairy tales. We all have complicated histories and imperfect families. The difference is, most of us don't throw away 23 years of love because we don't like how the story started." "You threw it away the minute you made that toast," I said quietly. "The minute you decided to humiliate me in front of everyone. The minute you made it clear that I'm not really part of this family." "You're not," she screamed, and the words hung in the air like a curse. "You're not part of this family? Not really. We tried to make you part of it. We wanted you to be part of it. But you were always holding back, always keeping yourself separate, always looking for reasons why you didn't belong instead of just belonging." "Because I knew," I screamed back. Somewhere deep down, I always knew something was wrong. I always knew I was different. I was other. I was here on borrowed time. And now I know why. Because you never let me forget it. None of you did. Every grateful comment, every reminder of what you'd given me, every time you made it clear that I should be thankful for your generosity instead of just loved for who I am. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of someone crying. My mother, I realized, though I couldn't bring myself to look at her. "So what now?" Emma asked, her voice empty of everything except exhaustion. "What's your grand revenge plan, Sarah? Because I know you have one. You didn't just discover those letters and decide to let it go. You've been planning something for months." She was right, of course. I did have a plan. I'd spent 3 months preparing for this moment, researching, gathering evidence, making arrangements. I'd been ready to destroy them all, to expose my father's corruption to the State Bar Association, to reveal how he'd used his position to manipulate the adoption system. I'd been prepared to tear this family apart piece by piece. But now, standing here in the ruins of the only family I'd ever known, I realized something. They'd already destroyed themselves. My revenge would have been anticlimactic. They were already broken, already guilty, already living with the knowledge of what they'd done. "I was going to destroy you," I said quietly. "I had evidence of Dad's bribes, documentation of the corruption, contacts at the state bar who would have been very interested in his methods. I was going to ruin his career, his reputation, everything he'd built." My father's face went white. My mother gasped. Several relatives took unconscious steps backward. "But then I realized something," I continued. "You've already ruined yourselves. You've lived with this lie for 23 years. You've watched me struggle with belonging, with identity, with feeling like I was never quite good enough. And you knew why. You knew it was because you'd stolen me from my real family and then spent decades making me grateful for the theft." I looked at each of them in turn. My parents, who couldn't meet my eyes. Emma, who was crying now. The relatives who were discovering just what kind of people they'd been celebrating all these years. "So here's my revenge," I said. my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet backyard. I'm done. I'm done pretending to be grateful. I'm done trying to earn my place in a family that never intended to give me one. I'm done being Emma's therapeutic pet project. I'm done being your charity case. I pulled out my phone and opened the email I'd drafted but never sent, the one to the State Bar Association, complete with scanned copies of all the letters and documentation of my father's corruption. I'm not going to destroy your career, Dad, I said, finger hovering over the send button. I'm not going to expose what you did. But not because I forgive you, and not because I think you deserve mercy. I'm not doing it because I don't want to spend any more of my life thinking about you. I deleted the email, watching my father's shoulders sag with relief. Instead, I'm going to do something that will hurt you much more, I continued. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to build a life that has nothing to do with you. I'm going to find my real family, Eleanor Walsh's relatives, my cousins, my heritage. I'm going to discover who I really am, not who you needed me to be. I started walking toward the gate, then paused and turned back one more time. And Emma, I said, addressing my cousin, my former sister, directly. Congratulations on your promotion. I hope you enjoy explaining to everyone at work how you got the Peterson account using inside information your sister gave you. I hope they're as impressed with your ethics as I am. Emma's face crumbled as she realized what I was saying. The Peterson account, her career-making opportunity, had come from information I'd provided. Information that, ethically speaking, she shouldn't have had access to. Information that could cost her everything if the right people found out. But I wasn't going to tell them. Just like I wasn't going to destroy my father's career. I was simply going to let them live with the knowledge of what they'd done, the fear of what might happen if their secrets came out, the weight of their own guilt. It was a more elegant revenge than anything I could have planned. I walked out of that backyard and out of their lives, leaving behind 23 years of trying to be the daughter they wanted instead of the person I was meant to be. I never looked back. 6 months later, I was living in a small apartment in Portland, working for a victims' rights organization, and slowly building relationships with Eleanor Walsh's surviving relatives, my real cousins, who welcomed me with open arms and shared stories about the grandmother who had fought so hard to raise me. I learned that she had been a strong woman, a widow who had raised 5 children on her seamstress salary. I learned that she had never remarried because she was too busy caring for her family. I learned that she had fought the Hendersons' adoption for 9 months, using her life savings on legal fees, before finally being forced to give up. I learned that she had kept a room in her small apartment ready for me until the day she died, just in case I ever came looking for her. I never saw the Hendersons again, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that my father had retired early from his practice, that my parents had sold the family home and moved to Florida, that Emma had left her high-profile job after some kind of ethical concerns arose. I didn't take any satisfaction in their downfall. By then, I was too busy building my real life to care about the destruction of the fake one they'd forced on me. Sometimes I wondered what my life would have been like if Eleanor Walsh had won her custody battle. If I'd grown up in that one-bedroom apartment in Queens, learning to sew alongside my grandmother, struggling financially but rich in family history and genuine love, I would never know. But I did know this. It would have been my life, my choice, my family, and that would have made all the difference. The Hendersons had given me material wealth, educational opportunities, social advantages, but they had taken something far more precious in return: my identity, my heritage, my right to choose my own family. In the end, their greatest revenge had been stealing my past. My greatest revenge was claiming my future. And on quiet evenings in my Portland apartment, surrounded by photos of Eleanor Walsh and stories from my real cousins, I finally understood what it meant to truly belong somewhere, not because someone had chosen me out of charity or psychological need, but because I had chosen myself. The end.